Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Friending the Mirror, Episode 2. I'm your host, Don Shaw, and I'm so happy to be here again with you. I survived the first episode, and here I am on the second one. Now, today I was supposed to have Wynn Charles. Unfortunately, she was not able to join me today, so I had to improvise. And I decided that I was going to, rather than cancel the show, that I would go ahead and just come up with a topic and talk about it. So today's episode is titled Building a Healthy Relationship. And joining me today, in a few moments, because I want to talk about a few things first, joining me today is going to be my husband, Ian Shaw, as Ian and I have been married for almost 20 years now. So when I talk about building a healthy relationship, who better to come on than the person that I have a healthy relationship with? Now, another thing about doing an improvisational show is it gives me a chance to experiment a little bit with things that I might not have been successfully able to do on the last show. For example, I figured out how to get my PowerPoint to work. So now I've got this lovely title page, and I can do a few things during the broadcast that I might not have, I wasn't able to do on the first one. So that's kind of where we're at now. And anyway, so about relationships. One of the things that I want to make clear for a lot of people who have a difference, like me with my face, for example, it's hard to imagine that somebody could actually be attracted to this face. So that was an insecurity that I had to deal with. Thankfully for me, I had a lot of support from my family. And I was loved, and I had friends. And even though it took a number of years before I had any sort of romantic relationship, I always knew, I always understood that I was going to find someone, that there would be someone out there who would find me attractive for the qualities that I did have. Now, was it easy? It was a long process. I mean, it's hard when you're in high school and you're in college and you see your friends who are dating and nobody's interested in you. And I mean, believe me, I had plenty of people who I was interested in. But to get anyone to reciprocate that, it just didn't happen for a long time. When it finally did happen, my first two relationships were with significantly older men who were kind of involved with somebody else. Now, I realize that this is not what a lot of people would consider socially acceptable, but the reason that I bring it up and the reason why it's significant to me is because these relationships developed because these men and I became friends. We became interested in each other for the people that we were. I never felt that they were taking advantage of me because I was vulnerable. No, I will say my first relationship, I actually feel sorry for the guy because I had a lot of emotional baggage. I did not know how to deal with those kind of intense emotions. I can't say, I suppose you could call it love. I don't have another word for it. And it was hard for me because it was somebody that I knew that I was not going to have a long-term relationship with, and that was hard. And then my third relationship, unfortunately, was with someone who did totally take advantage of me. He was someone close to my own age. I did some volunteer work in community theater, and I met him on a show that I was working on. I did theatrical lighting, and he was one of the actors. And honestly, he didn't have a lot of interest in me. I basically threw myself at him in rather embarrassing ways. And if you've read Facing Up to It, you've seen some of the details. Facing Up to It is my memoir. It's available as an ebook and as a hard copy, and it's through my website. You can find it. But my point being is, it was any time that you kind of force yourself on somebody, it's probably going to be a disaster. Actually, he never really did have a huge interest in me. It's just he was doing drugs, and actually was in the middle of a divorce and had nowhere else to go. So after the production was over, he came knocking on my door, and being naive, I let him in. And the few days that he was supposed to stay turned out to be almost a year. During that time, I was emotionally abused, and I became basically codependent to a drug addict. Now, I don't like to use the word victim, because for me, I know it was a choice. I mean, he stole from me. I was the one that was making the money, and thankfully I wasn't totally stupid. So he never compromised me financially, but it took a long time emotionally for me to get out. And it helps because it gives me an understanding of what it's like to be in an unhealthy relationship, in which, I mean, I was, like I said, I was taken advantage of, I was used, and I let it happen. And for the most part, I couldn't really see what was happening, or I didn't want to see what was happening. So when I finally did get out, the way that I did it was I kind of kept things hidden from my family as much as I could. I mean, they knew I was living with this guy. He wasn't really social with my family. He didn't want to be around my family. And when I finally made the decision that he had to go, I basically told my dad everything, because I felt like by telling my dad, it would force my hand. There would be no going back. And I mean, it worked. I mean, he didn't come over and threaten him. My dad did not come over and threaten the guy or anything. He didn't have to. To be honest, the guy was kind of a wimp. And in that respect, I was very lucky, because when I asked him to go, he did go. And I do understand that in a lot of relationships, that doesn't happen. That it's a lot harder to get the person to leave. So I feel fortunate. I also am fortunate that it was not a physically abusive relationship. Although part of my motivation for getting out was I felt that it was headed that way. I think it might have gone that way. But even after he left, even after he moved out, I still kind of clung a little bit. And it took quite a while before I could completely and emotionally let go. Interestingly, when I did finally emotionally let go is when someone else came into my life. And that someone else is going to join me now. And that would be my current husband of nearly 2 decades, Ian Shaw. So,
hello.
So this is Ian, and I like Ian. Now, interestingly, the first time that we met, I remember meeting him, but after he left, I just kind of forgot about him. He hadn't made a significant impression on me. But
I do have that problem.
yeah, the problem with Ian is fairly average. I mean, nice looking average, but he's kind of an average guy. And
thanks a bundle.
Well, and it's actually, to be honest, I believe that when we first met, I was still a little bit hung up on my ex-roommate, the drug addict. And it wasn't, I mean, basically I was lighting a show and at one of the theaters, and Ian was lighting on the lighting board at another community theater. And he knew the director, or should I say the director knew him. And she asked, I mean, I was the lighting tech, but she wanted his professional opinion on what I was doing, which was fine because I'm always open to learn and improve my craft. And she brought him in, and that's basically when I met him. And I think we interacted for maybe an hour, and then he left. But it wasn't until another director asked me to light a show at the theater that Ian was working at. So, and that was totally new territory for me because the lighting system, the technical system at that theater was so much more complex than what I was used to. And I needed Ian's help in order to successfully light the show.
And as technical chair at that theater, that was more or less one of my duties, was to make sure that those people that do come in and light a show get the assistance they need with the system in order to get things up and running.
Well, and I will say that one of the things that does happen when you are working in technical theater, and probably as much, if not more so, in some respects, than if you're acting in a show.
You have to be there when the actors aren't.
Yeah, and you almost have the theater to yourself, and you're there very long hours. Sometimes late into the night, because if the actors are rehearsing from 7 in the evening, 7 to 10, sometimes you don't get the stage till 10.
And they're all busy bailing off and everything else, and you finally have the stage. Now you can get in there and you can set lights and you can set levels, and oh yeah, we need to tweak this fixture or adjust that. And that's the time you've got to do it.
So we basically ended up spending a lot of time together that we were basically alone. So
unsupervised in a theater.
In a big dark space. So if you could, Ian, explain, I know that you have mentioned to me, we've had this discussion, you did notice me, whereas I kind of met you and you passed out of my memory.
It helped that you were climbing a ladder at the time.
Okay.
And Dawn does have a very nice figure.
Should I stand up and show it off?
Well, that's up to you. But no, and that was one of the first things I noticed. But I was young, and that's sort of where the eyes go. That's
well, and it's not exactly. I mean, for being such a wonderful, nice person, and all my friends, my family, everybody just thinks Ian is great. But to be honest, he hadn't. I mean, here I am with a difference. I mean, there's kind of you can understand a little bit why I might not have attracted droves of young men. Ian had not really had a girlfriend.
Well, one brief girlfriend prior, and that was not a positive experience for either of us.
So here we are both with a history of just not having been able to make romantic connections. And we met, I think we were in our late 20s. Well, I was like 27, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And anyway, so we met and we just started hanging out together outside of the theater. And actually, even though I said that I had been involved in other men previously, Ian is actually,
Didn't matter.
Well, what I'm saying
to
is,
me at least.
Well, my point is, Ian was actually my first date and the first person that I would truly call a boyfriend. My ex-roommate, the drug addict, never pretended to love me. And to be honest, I actually give him credit for that. Because at least, I mean, for all the things he was, at least phony. I mean, he was a liar, but he didn't try to pretend. So, and then honestly, I consider that a positive trait. So anyway, so we basically, and it was a little rough. I mean, we didn't have what I would call fireworks. It was more subtle. I mean, we wanted to spend time together. We wanted to be together. We had the time. I spent a lot of time. He was living, obviously, he had his own place. And I did too. I spent a lot of time at his place.
Made your cat very jealous.
Yeah, well, yeah. I had cats. And that was the other thing. I mean, he loves cats, and I had cats. And I mean, for those of us who are cat lovers, believe me, never ever make a choice of a man over your cat. You know, because the cat's probably going to be with you in most cases longer than the guy. My dad's kind of finding that out. My dad is back on the dating scene, and he has a cat. And every once in a while, he's like, "Oh, my new girlfriend's allergic to cats. I need to find a new home for her." And thankfully, he doesn't right away. And within a month, that particular girlfriend is not in his life anymore. And guess who is still there? The cat. But anyway, I don't want to get into my dad's personal life. If he watches this, he'll probably be upset with me. So, but anyway, I wanted to share one thing with you though, because obviously, eventually, I did mention that we had gotten married, and I just wanted to show you just how young we were. I mean, we got married in 95. So
you notice I still had hair. There wasn't any gray there. obviously a while ago.
So I love looking at how young I was, and wishful thinking. No, actually, you know, aging is actually a wonderful process. One of the things I want to point out with the relationship that Ian and I have is when you think about, you know, how we met. What were we doing? We were doing something that we both really enjoyed doing. He was on the technical board of the theater. I was working at a different theater. So we were getting out there, and we were doing something that was fun and interesting. And whether you're looking for a romantic relationship, or whether you're just looking for something to occupy your time, meet people, make friends, getting out and doing things that you enjoy doing, I cannot emphasize that enough as a way for people to get more social. People who have differences, I think they often end up isolated, or they feel they should be isolated. I was lucky in that respect too, because my parents never tried to hide me away. I mean, yes, I had to endure being stared at and comments and whatnot. And of course, lots of times when I had romantic interest in people who just didn't even notice me. So that's painful. But on the other hand, I wouldn't trade it, because I get out and I do things. And I'm not afraid to be in public. And it's an adjustment that some people have a hard time making. And I feel very fortunate that I've just always been able to do that. And somebody actually told me quite a long time ago, before I met Ian, that I would meet someone, and that more often than not, people who look different are going to find somebody who doesn't. Again, you're going to be in your community. If you're in a certain community, again, you're going to meet other people. If you get out into that community, be it online or be it physically. I mean, if you are, I'm sorry, I just saw something come up on the chat. You're going to meet like people. You're going to meet people with like interests. I mean, if you are in a wheelchair, for example, and there's a whole social group that's in a wheelchair, and you're hanging out with those people, then those are the people that are going to become part of your social circle. I just got a comment and it said that my webinar started 19 minutes in. Well, what happens sometimes is when it starts, you need to refresh your browser. It doesn't always start automatically for everyone. I actually happen to have the webinar. I have a laptop that's sitting next to me.
Which is why I keep occasionally looking over there.
It's actually showing the live broadcast. And to be honest, I think there's about a 30-second delay from the time that anything happens. I mean, it takes me.
If we say something 30 seconds later,
you'll see it. So if I hit start broadcast,
it still hasn't set it yet.
It's going to start probably 30 seconds after. So I'd be interested, Jill, to know if it started in the middle. Were we in the middle of a conversation? Because if you didn't hear my introduction, then chances are the whole thing is there. And I'm sorry, but you can probably go by all means, please go to the replay and watch it from the beginning. And I do appreciate, Jill, that you made that comment because it gives me a chance to explain. My countdown, actually, I was watching the countdown during the beginning, and my countdown actually got slow. And I had to refresh my browser because it was like, your webinar starts in 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but it's quarter till. And so I refreshed the browser and it caught up. I don't want to get too much into the technical stuff, but I think it is important to address because honestly, somebody had the exact same comment last week. So it's thank you for bringing it up, and I'm happy to address that. Okay, let's see. More relationship stuff. Oh, one of the things that I brought, I grabbed a photo that I thought would be a lot of fun to share because, I mean, I like to do things that are a little bit unconventional. And so when I decided to, what did we want to have on our wedding cake? And I thought, well, okay, let's do something that's a little more realistic. You know, like Ian and I have a tendency to kind of butt heads, both literally and physically, because, you know, we're in a relationship, right? So what I decided to do for the top of the wedding cake was, oh, hang on a second. Like I say, you get to play around with technology, and sometimes you have to. Okay, so what our wedding cake is this. And we still have them, actually. I've managed to keep the cats from knocking them over and breaking them. Mm-hmm. So we have, this was our wedding cake topper. And I also need to get us,
file under keeping it real.
Yeah, keeping it real. So even now, we still we do this. Yeah, both in an affectionate way.
Usually.
And sometimes, you know, in a not as affectionate way. But hey, we're a couple, and you know what? We're still together. So, does anybody have any questions for us? I know that probably one of the biggest questions, like when I talk to high school groups, it's funny, the kids, the little kids, like elementary school, they find out that I have Icelandic horses, and I'm like, oh, tell us about your horses. And the high school
I can tell you
kids,
about what they break.
Everything.
Yeah.
And my now, hey, Jan, you made me lose my train of thought. Choo-choo. So the high school kids, if Ian happens to be with me, they want to know, how did we meet? And I think it's true of anyone for any relationship. And that's why I talk about finding things to do that interest you, because that's where you're going to find people with like interests. And I also encourage people to, if they have a hobby that they haven't pursued, by all means, go out and pursue it. Get started, take lessons, because you're going to meet people. Like if you've always wanted to try playing a musical instrument, you could start taking a lesson, and then
you're allowed to get you playing a musical instrument.
Yeah, well, I actually started. I just didn't do it very well. I played harp when I was in high school because I had a huge crush on one of my best friends, and he played harp. In fact, that's why I started karate. But I tell you, I did much better with the karate than I did with the harp. I actually managed to achieve my black belt while I was in college, whereas the harp, I never, I mean, I wouldn't be as successful with a mandolin now if I didn't have electronic tuners. So thank goodness for electronic tuners. Which is really interesting because when I'm sitting back, I can tell if somebody's off pitch when they're singing or if something's out of tune, boy, I can tell. But if I'm sitting behind the instrument, I can't hear it. It's sad. Anyway. So please, by all means, if you have any questions for us, I'm generally pretty open in what I'll answer. I mean, Ian, it's been good for Ian. I'm good for Ian because I'm one of those that goes out and does things. And it's like, oh, let's go do this. We both like live music. And so I'm the scheduler. I'm the one that finds the bands that we like. And thankfully, we like a lot of the same bands. And it's like, oh, so-and-so, Carbon Leaf is going to be in the area. Let's go see them. Or, oh, yeah, they're doing 4 shows and they're all doable within this weekend. Let's go. So we kind of end up following them around a little bit. And I feel lucky because, Ian has been very supportive. I mean, I've got 12 horses and he supports them. He doesn't ride.
Not anymore anyway.
Yeah, that's another important thing about relationships is keeping your distance as well. I think at first, I know I just wanted to be together with him a lot. I know with his previous relationship, he actually found that kind of stifling. And I know that with my first relationship, I know that was part of the problem. I was very clingy and it was very emotionally difficult for, me and for the other person as well. It was a burden. And hopefully, I've matured. But every newness, there's always got newness in a new relationship where you just want to be together. But I think one of the things that makes us last, that keeps our relationship good, is the fact that we have different interests, that we don't do everything together, but we do a lot. We do some things together. So we have our time. And we have our time together and we have our time separate. And we support each other for the most part. She's probably more supportive of me than it's like, oh man, you're gonna like
Dawn requires a lot of support.
I do. I'm high maintenance. So, and I'm very fortunate because right now, at least, Ian's the one with income. So, which is nice because it allows me to get out there and do what I want and hopefully start generating some more income of my own and the things that I love to do. So again, I feel very fortunate in that I have someone who is able to provide me with the financial support and the moral support, the emotional support to get behind what I do. I'm laughing because I just looked over at the playback monitor and it shows us putting our heads together and it's kind of cute. All right. So I know that there's not very many of you on live, but please, if you have any questions, and I'm always available to answer questions. If you contact me through the website, www.facinguptoit.com. Find me on Facebook at Facing Up to It with Dawn. I can't even say my own name. Hello. Facing Up to It with Dawn Shaw. I'm trying to get better on my Twitter platform, but I can be found on Twitter at Facing Up to It. Imagine that. You start seeing a pattern here. And I'm always happy to answer questions, always happy to help out if and when I can. So I'm getting a comment from the woman who had a problem last week with, and she said, yeah, she had to refresh her browser and it came right up. Mm-hmm. So that would be my recommendation. If it doesn't come on time And I'm not saying that I'm always going to be, right on the spot, on the top of the hour, but I should be up within a minute. So if it's gone more than a minute, by all means, refresh your browser. Okay, well, we don't seem to have any questions beyond the technical comments, and that's totally fine because this is relatively new and some of you guys are new to watching webinars. So I'm happy to provide the information that's going to improve your experiences in the future, not just with me, but in any webinar that you watch. And I think there might be a delay on the chat, so I'll give it a little bit of time. If not, I'm going to close the show, and I'm going to do it the way I wanted to do it on the first show, but didn't have the technology set up to do. So I'm going to try experimenting with that and see if it works. And Ian actually taught me a great technical trick with the computer because I was having trouble getting my laptop to go from window to window. I would get my, I have 8.1 on my laptop. And he taught me that if you hit Alt-Tab, it shows you all the different screens you have open. Because sometimes 8.1 will stick you somewhere and not really give you a good way to get out. Thank you, Jill. I'm so happy to have you here, and everyone else too, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. I just love connecting with people, and I'm really excited to be building an audience, and I just hope that my hope for this is that it just continues to grow, because I'd like to just reach out to a lot of people, and I'd like to address issues. In fact, anyone who knows of people who might be good guests for this show. It's about appearance and appearance-related issues. It's not just about face. It's about any sort of appearance-related insecurities, issues. I'm happy to have guests that have personal experiences or even just experts that know a lot about a certain area of interest. And I will find those people, or you can recommend people. So by all means, please contact me, make suggestions. Let me say that next week's show, not next week, 2 weeks, February 3rd.
We have a vacation to take.
Yeah, we're leaving. We're going on a cruise. It's going to be great. But actually, the show is approximately, it's twice a month. And that's my goal, is to be able to air a show twice a month. And my next guest is Jennifer, and when I did my test, I should have asked her how to pronounce her last name, but it's Jennifer, I believe it's Bielis or Bielis, and I'm embarrassed if I did not do that correctly, but she will be on. She has vertigo issues, she has hearing impairment issues, and so she wears hearing assistive devices, and it's something that people react to and respond to and make assumptions about. So, and she has limitations due to the vertigo. So I'm looking forward to talking with her. She wrote a book, so we'll be sharing about her book. It's called Here I Am, H-E-A-R. And so she will be my next guest on February 3rd at noon Pacific. That about wraps it up. I'm going to try my fancy little new closing, and we'll see if I can get it to work this time. And I actually have some fabulous music that some friends of mine were kind enough to allow me to use. So I'm going to try to make it work this time. So you just bear with me for about another 30 seconds. I will be good to go, and I really hope to see you next week.
We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other.